your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up and listen to me, let's go. Keep your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up,
Who's
listen
down
to me,
with
let's go. Keep your head
TTP? Who's down with TTP? You down with TTP? Who's down with TTP? Hey, real quick, here comes the breakdown. Yo, what up, what up, what up? Alright. What's happening? Damn, I don't know why I feel like it's been a minute before I actually did one of these videos. It's been like busy couple of weeks, and for me musically, nearly gotten discovered twice. Got a couple of pointers. I'm getting closer and closer each time, man. Got marketing stuff coming on. I got an album getting ready to drop. Like it's been real, man. But this is not the channel for that. If you see my face, you already know what it is. If you don't know who I am, allow me to tell you real quick. It's the MICCASTERJ. That's me, the Mike Caster, and right now you are watching Trust the Plus. All right, a video series where we go through everything emotional and mental triggers. All right, and this is episode 4 of TTP. All right, which is the possession of depression. So that's the name of this episode, the possession of depression. And obviously we're going to talk about depression. So we just going to jump right into this, man. We wanted to make sure that these videos stay consistent and that we keep things going along, man, and we get right to it. So as you already know, with anything, we always got to start with the definition. And the definition for depression is clearly stated right here. It is a common, serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. And although it's treatable, depression causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities you once enjoyed, and it can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease your ability to function at work and home. It's a mouthful. We're not going to do the whole where I reread the definition thing. You guys know what it is, man. It's depression. I know I use the word killer a lot, but depression literally, for lack of a better term, I'm not being funny, is a killer. Like people literally have felt this to the point where they felt like it just wasn't worth living anymore. So like this hits deeply because I've lost friends to depression. I've seen stuff happen to people who I know who went through depression and luckily made it through, but they just weren't the same exact person after that. And myself has gone through depression, so this hits home on a lot of scales. So, and then when I say I've gone through depression, I've also had suicidal tendencies in my past history with depression. So this hits on a lot of scales. All right. So, and that's again being real with you. So, jumping from that, the thing that I want to turn around and take away from them, I do a little bit different with as far as definition when it comes to depression is, it's very important for people to understand that depression is not the same thing as being sad. Okay, so encompasses sadness, but it is not the same thing as being sad. So even over here, it turns around and states that depression forms out usually from a grieving process. So, sadness is natural. Sadness is something you feel is usually a reaction to something that made you, uncomfortable, or something that it just kind of triggers you emotionally. You were close to it. You had a relation to it, or it meant something to you. Okay, now, but the thing with depression, the part where depression turns around and evolves from sadness, is when it does not withdraw. So when it drags out. Okay, So when depression gets to this intense level of sadness, for lack of a better term, and it doesn't disappear. So when you're initially sad, you're fine. When your sadness continues and it's drawn out, that's depression. And with that also comes along the association of grief. Grief is a partner of depression. Just like fear was a partner of anxiety, grief is a partner of depression because that's usually where depression likes to seep itself in. So, just keep stuff real simple. In grief, painful feelings come, stuff comes in a wave, memories, emotions, or things tend to turn around and hit you, and you tend to become disinterested. And then, self-esteem issues, worthlessness, self-loathing, commonalities, things that we're going to all join into. So, this is stuff that usually encompasses grief, and depression takes that and evolves it and makes it deeper and puts you into a zone where this is what you are embodying. So, this is what you've internalized now completely. So, with that, I think it's a fair way to turn around and transition into how it gets into your life. All right. So, from there, depression. So, the way that they turn around and describe it is that depression is just like many things that we turn around and experience, can be a combination of things. So, it enters the more grief you internalize. Because we're not going to say feel. Grief is a normal process. But when you internalize it and everything now just becomes a factor to where you're just so, disturbed by it that it's just not much affecting your whole well being, that's depression. All right. So it enhances that grief and makes it stick. It keeps it consistent and it doesn't take you out of that. So this is where you actually, one of the things I would usually introduce that is bereavement. Bereavement is an easy way for people to get into depression because sometimes people can go through an extensive period of sadness. And that's an obvious one. Another one is when you're in one of those downward spirals. So you hear that term a lot. That stems from how depression seeps in. That downward spiral where everything just seems to be going wrong, that's depression seeping in. It's leading you to think that your whole life is just a series of consequences, one after the other, one just following behind each other in a pattern. Okay. And it usually stems from stuff like, could be like a breakup, man, like bad relationship, like the person who you were loving for years, and all of a sudden they just flipped the switch and they were gone and they didn't care and they disappeared. Like that can cause depression, man. You gave so much of yourself to it, and once it was gone, it was devastating. It was devastating. Your body didn't know how, your mind didn't know how to process it. You didn't know how to process it emotionally. So now you're stuck. You're just in this zone, and that's that grief. Um, so the crazy thing is, some studies actually even turn around and say that according to this, some studies actually say that you actually get depression the older you're more susceptible to it the older you get. So it's more common. And then obviously it's also more common in people with difficult social and economic circumstances for reasons we all know, man. Sometimes you look at how the other half is living, and for most people who are in those social and economic circumstances, you're kind of like in that, it's usually a state of, man, I just wish I can have at least a little bit of that. Or, times are really hard. You had to turn around and do a lot of working for a lot of stuff, or overcompensating for a lot of things you didn't have, while the other half doesn't have to do that. But as we all know, depression can hit at any level. So I just want to make sure that you understand that. That's not me defending somebody who has wealthy. A wealthy person's depression issues can be completely different from somebody with social economics. So I'm not deterring from that. But at the same time, I need you to understand depression can hit anybody at any point, from anywhere. Doesn't matter. So and from that, we just kind of break it down, and we're just going to hit certain key points. So obviously, depression can hit you at stressful events. That's a high risk level. We talked about relationship breakdowns. We talked about, bereavement. These are things that can introduce it into your life very, very easily, because it, it creates increasing problems that cause you to become distant. Especially like relationship issues, especially if your family was intermingled in your relationship. Now people are split down the middle because they don't know whose side to turn around and take, which sucks. It happens. That can turn around to help. Personality, if you deal with low self-esteem or overly self-critical of yourself, that's a form of getting depression, to allowing depression to seep in. Family history apparently can be hereditary. So if your family has histories of depression, it's obvious that you're going to get your moments of depression as well. So that kind of goes into something that's usually called like generational curses. Do you, just you want to, and this is probably stems more so for your children, for those of you who are parents, because I'm a parent, stems more for your children. You probably want to keep it more encompassing, an environment to where everything doesn't always feel so morbid or gripe. There's nothing wrong with being real about your children, but you probably want to refrain from that whole just, have it. This is what we're going through. Everything's difficult kind of talks every single time, and have them enjoy more of the aspects of things when it's going well, or what you do have, or when things are sad, allowing them to have that moment of coping and then finding the positivity out of it. Because children are also susceptible to depression, as we'll turn around and cover as we go into it. Giving birth, everybody knows that, we'll talk about that later on, where you have, postnatal depression and stuff, how women are affected after giving birth, or even while they're pregnant, which happens in some cases. Feelings of loneliness, if you were cut off, lost friends and stuff like that, family disowned, and those are kind of like side extreme examples, but just loneliness can also affect you if you have those personality things. That stack layer stuff. So if you're feeling that self-esteem issue and you're self-critical of yourself, it also creates a feeling of loneliness because you feel like you're probably not as good, or you stand out because you're not, you don't shine the same way somebody else does. All that can impact you differently. And of course, alcohol. We know that that's definitely something that can cause depression, and drugs. And then for those of you also thinking about it, two things that I want to tell you off the back: drowning your sorrows, which is an alcohol term. The people, you already know what that is. Alcohol doesn't help you, yo. It affects the chemistry of the brain and actually increases risk of depression, which is why people fall into more of a downward spiral after they take on drinking. And again, you know who you are. This is not a shaming center. We're not going to turn around and make this into a shaming center, but I want you to turn around and take away from that. And then even somebody who I don't usually address in these videos, sorry y'all, I'm also making sure that my phone is completely charged. I told y'all that so I got to do stuff in the mids. We good. It's all good, yo. Keep it real. But of course, for my people who do cannabis, my weed guys, bad news for you. Sometimes some of the batches you got can also bring on depression. That's why you see a lot of teenagers affected by it. So I'm very sorry. Check your batches, because that also can lead to it as well too. And of course, if people are going through illnesses, that's a lot of times depression can turn around and take over. People can already kind of feel like it's the end. This is they're already at a point where there's a point of no return and stuff like that. Even injuries can turn around and cause depression, especially head injuries, because they trigger certain synapses inside of the brain that can kind of affect those emotions mentally and make you more susceptible to depression. Sorry guys, I think I had like a dust in my nose or something. I'll deal with it at some point. That can also turn around and create depression for you. And then just kind of going into some different aspects of it, because you already know I like to go against types. I'm not going to delve too hard into it, but I do want you to know some types of stuff. So you got persistent depressive disorder, which is a type of depression that lasts 2 years or longer. So that's when it's like it's you're not out of it. Like, you ever seen those people who just always seem like they're constantly sad, and just no matter what's going for them, they can't come out of it. That'll be one of those. You also got bipolar disorder, which people are also familiar with, which can also fall into like two conditions, two different types. So you got manic depression and you got hypomanic. So manic depression is that extreme kind where you have that alternative stuff where, you got different symptoms like rapid speech, grandiose ideas, elevated mood, and others. And then hypomanic would be kind of a less extremes. And then in certain circumstances with people with bipolar disorders, they don't feel neither. But that's another form of depression. You have seasonal affective disorder, which when I learned this, I was like, what? This is a thing. So you can actually get depressed from seasons. So, people who usually get sad about the winter time because, either the natural lights of the day is kind of affecting them or they kind of feel more isolated, or it's probably associated to a lot of grief. They that can create seasonal affective disorder where, again, like you said, you seek that isolation, that weight gain, and that oversleeping. So that is bad. So I suggest finding your Christmas spirit because it's no bueno. It's not good for you. It's not that deep. Santa's not bad, I promise. But I definitely could relate to that because I've had seasonal depression at certain points because the holidays are when I've actually lost a lot of family members at times. So I'm not even gonna lie, it it's weird to read it because I've felt that. Then of course you got perinatal depression. So this is the stuff that I was talking about after women get pregnant. So postpartum is what you guys are familiar of calling with it, which is condition of major depression, and it's common. It's usually associated to anxiety that women are feeling, or sadness or fatigue due to all the processes and natural effects of childbirth that usually weighs heavy on females during that time. So fellas, be patient with your ladies. They're going through a lot, man. Just kind of help them not teeter that line, and just be a strong partner. And then women, just kind of make sure you are encompassing yourself around people who are really like helping your pregnancy along and not getting on your nerves, for lack of a better term, man. So, kind of set yourself up for success. And of course, they have another version of that, which is PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And all that leads to say is that menstrual cycles. So, period. So that precognitive uh, disposition that you're gaining before you initially hit your flow starts coming. Yeah, apparently that's a thing. That's also a form of depression. So kind of want to be careful about that, ladies. Help your man out and tell him what he need to supply you with beforehand so he can set you up for success. Um, Disruptive mood dysregulation syndrome is also another form of depression, and that actually is more current in children. So your temper tantrums, that irritability, definitely want to turn around and check that because those can definitely lead to episodes, and even turns around and says it can lead to bipolar depression. So keep your kids in line. No, but for real though, just definitely kind of make sure that your kid is learning how to express themselves in better ways and stuff, because that level of constant frustration and irritability can definitely turn into something else. And then you got atypical depression, which is a subtype of major depression. That's what causes you to do the oversleeping, overeating, and irritability. So it actually it makes you extraordinarily sensitive. So this is the one that kind of creates those other effects, like people who turn around and end up bulimic, or vice versa. This kind of plays a factor into it. It gives you that kind of that heaviness, man, or you have difficulty connecting with people who you usually are close with. Then you have reactive depression, which goes by many names, and this one is called situational depression. So that comes from traumatic or events or major life-changing events. Like for I guess for teens would be a big move, where they have to leave all their friends and family. That's a major life changing event. So, or for my military folks, where you got to turn around, change a whole base, and now you got to explain it to your family. You got to turn around, go back through the processing. You already know PCS process and stuff like all that can kind of create different factors in your mind that can create that depression. So I just wanted to make sure you guys know that. And then, of course, from there, we go into ways that it affects you. Um, which, if you guys, if you know anything about depression, there's a lot of ways. So we're going to touch on these. I'm not going to delve too deep because some of these are self-explanatory. So, loss of interest or pleasure in activities you once enjoyed. And that could be from anything from sex to just simply playing games. Changes in appetite. So again, going back to that, either trying to gain weight or lose a lot of weight, so that being anorexic or being bulimic, man, those are forms. Those are also, but they didn't talk about them in here, but those can correlate to depression. Trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. Apparently, that actually is also another form of depression. That's a new one for me. I learned things on here too, folks. Because I told you I'd actually be doing real research in this. Loss of energy or increased fatigue. So you just constantly tired. Something that I had come across a couple times, for my people who were dealing with those, financial issues and everything like that. You had to work those extra jobs. You had to do two jobs. You had to do more than two jobs, or you had to work extra shifts. And it just feels like you're getting nowhere and you're doing all this extra work and it's draining you out. Yeah. I mean, it's depression is seeping in. Increased purposeless physical activity. So, inability to sit still, pacing, hand wrangling, slow movement, speech, all those stuff associates with depression. Feeling worthless or guilty, a very commonality to depression, where it's mostly just that self-loathing. You don't really feel your value encompasses for much, and it's a sucky place to be in. You got difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. So it gets harder to kind of rationalize things because your mind is just always, you know, disassociated in the moment. And of course, we can't talk about symptoms without thoughts of death or suicide, which I will also add a hotline at the end here for those of you who are kind of on the higher edge of depression. Because I'm all about people seeking the help that they need. So I'm not going to sing you out, but I'm going to put that line there. Whoever it is that comes around and catches this video. And then of course you got feeling sad and anxious at times. And one of the things that the studies show is that it's actually estimated each year 17 million American adults will actually experience depression. 17 million. That's a lot of people, yo. So we gotta really start kind of taking ourselves into account and creating a lot more pirate positive environments for ourselves through our sad points, because that's way too many people. So again, other stuff is that empty feeling, hopelessness, being pessimistic, crying a lot, feeling bothered, annoyed, or angry, even remembering stuff. That is a form of depression as well. And then, once again, just it kind of reiterates certain points like weight changes and sleep and appetite. So just you want to really turn around and check yourself. And one thing I also added is like with children, you want to really make sure that you're watching your children, because it's very hard to detect depression in them because they can't articulate well. It's something that I'm making sure I'm Sorry, I hope you don't mind. He's good. But it's something I'm kind of making sure that I am being cognitive of with my child, especially with how COVID has affected our children, how they're just kind of like boxed in. You can only go from certain places and specific points at a time versus that free range that we had when we were growing up. You know, it's a different time period, and that can create depression. So, you know, watch out for irritability, mood swings, or, you know, feelings of incompetence where they kind of beating themselves up. They're always like, you know, I can't do anything. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that, or I can't do it. Like, just watch out for that. You know, self harm. If your children are in school, they're getting into trouble a lot. Like, all these are patterns, and you want to check it quickly before it becomes something worse. And then, of course, with that, I want to turn around and go into more of how to deal with it. If you are someone that's dealing with uh, depression. So they have medications, and if you've watched any of my videos, I'm not too big on medication. So if you do want to take medications, I have sites here. They're linked to certain things. You can look up certain those medications and stuff like that. And there's one site that explains them. But, you know, there's a lot of discretion behind that. What I do want to turn around and introduce you to is certain types of therapy, because what the commonality with depression and when people talk about uh, treatment, talk about getting help. So it's created this bad taste in people's mouths when it turns around as far as getting help, because it subjects therapy. When people think of therapy, they only think of psychotherapy, which is that talk therapy. You know, a trained person talking to you, help you identify and learning to cope with the factors and what contributes to that mental health condition, such as depression. But that's not the only form, and it's actually separate. So movies make it seem like it's one thing, but it's actually separate, different types of therapies that you can do encompassing that. Also, psychotherapy has actually been proven to be very effective. They just don't show that light. They make it seem more annoying. So you got cognitive behavioral therapy, which you can also do. So, you know, therapists help you to work, uncover unhealthy patterns or thoughts and identify how they may be causing harmful behaviors, reactions, and beliefs about yourself. So it's kind of getting to the stem of the problem of why do you feel the way you feel. And you got dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, which is similar to the one I said before with cognitive, but it puts specific emphasis on validation or accepting uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, and behaviors instead of fighting them, which I think is healthy. Again, going to that plus, because I always like associating all of these different emotional mental triggers with the plus that I told you guys about. You know, ensuring that you're protecting your star Bethlehem, you're not internalizing, you have the right pillars in place, the right branches in place, and especially when it comes to stuff like, you know, depression, you want to make sure you're expressing those feelings, you know, to somebody. You know, who's in your above all, who do you trust, who can you go to turn around and to be real about stuff. Like, be open about it. Don't internalize it, man. It doesn't make you weak to be going through depression. I just told you 17 million people are going to be affected by it by the time this year is up. Um, so it's not just you. But if you internalize it, it will feel just like you. And that's where it gets you. So, you know, definitely turn around and express it. And the cool part about the theory behind that is that coming to terms with your harmful thoughts or emotions, you can accept that change is possible and make a recovery plan. So, you know, by accepting that you felt these things, you can then begin to process how to turn around and dissect them a little bit better. And then psychodynamic therapy, which is a form of talk therapy designed to help you better understand and cope your day-to-day life. And that's the one everybody sees, where you usually got the notepad and everything. They're helping you go back through childhood experience and trying to find out how to identify how you feel now. And then other forms is meditation and acupuncture, which I'm going to always tell you, yo, pray more, do yoga, Draw a picture. That's a form of meditation. Acupuncture has actually been said to be as effective as counseling. So let that sink in. You know, but do do things to turn around and get you out of that funk, or to basically, more importantly, help your brain inhibitors be able to kind of cycle through that sadness, instead of dwelling on it, because a lot of times that's usually how depression sticks. Our mind's mental capability to process through and then adapt to the changes that are affecting us heavily, and just reinforcing that can mitigate a whole lot. You don't even need the therapy. Just reinforcing that is a way of combating against depression. So, and then of course, as always, you know, gotta hit you with the scripture. So, the scripture today comes from First Peter, chapter 5, verse 7, King James version. In case anybody's curious, I know I don't ever really say that, but I'm going to start. It's King James version. So come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And all that goes on to say is, God wants you to give your burdens to Him. Don't keep them in. Same thing that we were talking about. So, I'm always going to pick up God and plug the Lord in. Give your problems to God. Give what ails you. Give what troubles you. Give whatever it is. Turn around and give it to God. All right. So, it's not worth turning around and holding on to. So, definitely give that to God. Talk to somebody. From people who are still trying to find that spiritual growth. Talk to somebody. Who's in your above all. Tell them. Just don't internalize these things. This is what I mainly want you to gain from this. Depression defeats you the more you internalize it. The more you internalize your grief, the more you carry on that lasting sadness is where it has you. All right. So, be sad, but then learn to release it. Grieve, but then learn the process is what I need you to gain from this. And then a couple of other things, if that therapy and stuff didn't work out for you, because I realized I kind of overshadowed this. Exercise, exercise. I'm not going to tell you to avoid alcohol and substance for obvious reasons, but definitely monitor your intake. Alcohol is not an outlet, and for you know, my cannabis people, yeah. Hey, pay attention to who your supply is, yo. For real, for real. don't set yourself up with a bad batch, yo. I'm just gonna leave that there. Learn how to set limits. Again, boundaries. We keep coming back to the set boundaries. So, like, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling worse in anxiety and depression symptoms. It's time to make some changes inside your life. There's some stuff that's really like just you're carrying too much, man. So, for lack of a better term, take care of yourself. All right. And you also got supplements. Again, discretion. Talk to your doctor. Get more information on those type of things, man. But vitamins can also help you as well too, man. So you got your omega threes and stuff like that. You got your vitamin B, your vitamin D. So in case you're not familiar with that, vitamin B like B12 and B6 are healthy for the brain. Man, I told you keep that brain in control, and keep keep those senses sharp so that way you can process these things easier. All right, when the levels are low, it's a risk for depression. And then vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, we already know that. It's sunny D. Vitamin D is important for the brain as well too, the heart and the bone health. So there's a link between those, and deficiency in that also causes depression. All right. Research has been done for this. I'm giving you straight facts. All right. Take your vitamins. So that's all I pretty much have for that. All right. And then, run some tests, even if you're not really sure if you have, check your moods, check your appetite, your sleep patterns, your activity levels, man. Start monitoring those, your thoughts. All right. start monitoring those. And just those alone are good ways to combat depression. But other than that, that's my time. You already know what it is. It's TTP, all right? And I am, once again, the MICCASTERJ. That's me, the Mike Caster, Mr. MCJ himself, all right? And always, always, always trust the plus. Peace.